My entire life has been a story written in ledgers. First, as a young woman, a legal archivist for the city, tracing the history of properties through faded ink and brittle paper. Then, as a mother. For 35 years, my daughter Anna was my master ledger. Every sacrifice was a line item, every small joy a credit. Her education, the braces, the down payment on her first car. I logged it all, not in dollars, but in the quiet satisfaction of providing a foundation she could build upon. Her father, a good man, would have wanted it that way. He believed in foundations. It was what he did, building homes until his heart gave out far too soon. I thought I was honoring him by giving Anna the world he couldn't. But the world I gave her wasn't enough. When she married Mark, a man whose ambition was a thin veneer over a profound laziness, I saw the ledger begin to shift. My ancestral home, the one my grandfather built with his own hands on Maple Street, suddenly wasn't grand enough. The annual holidays in the countryside weren't aspirational enough. The financial support I provided wasn't just accepted, it became expected, an invisible utility like water or electricity. The calls became less frequent. The visits, when they happened, felt like obligatory check-ins. My daughter's eyes scanning my home not with affection, but with a cool appraisal of an estate agent. Then came the whispers, the gentle, concerned suggestions. It started small. "Mother, you seem a bit tired today. Are you eating enough?" Then it escalated. "Mother, you forgot you told me that story yesterday." I hadn't. I had a mind like a steel trap, a gift from decades spent in city archives. I knew what she was doing. She was building a case, laying a new foundation, not of love, but of perceived incompetence. It was a methodical campaign of gaslighting, designed to make me doubt my own mind, to make me seem a liability to anyone who was watching. The worst part was how she used my love against me, her concern a perfectly crafted weapon. The intervention, as she called it, took place on a Sunday. They sat me down in my own living room on the sofa where I'd read Anna bedtime stories. Mark had a stack of glossy brochures, The Willows, Sunset Meadows, Golden Years Living. Each page showed smiling, silver-haired residents engaged in pottery or gentle yoga. "It's for your own good, Mother," Anna said, her voice dripping with manufactured pity. "We're so worried about you here all alone. What if you fall? What if you forget to turn off the stove?" The irony was staggering. I had just balanced the annual books for 3 local businesses, but my own daughter was trying to convince me I was incapable of operating a toaster. I felt the walls of my own life closing in. They weren't asking, they were informing. The drive to the Willows was a blur of silent tears. The room was small, painted a sterile beige, with a single window overlooking a manicured lawn where no one ever walked. It smelled of disinfectant and quiet despair. "You'll be so much more safe here," Anna cooed, placing my grandmother's photo on the small nightstand. "We'll visit all the time." As the orderly closed the door, leaving me in that beige box, a sound softer than the click of the lock, but 1,000 times more final, buzzed from the purse on my lap. I looked at my phone. A banking notification. "A wire transfer has been initiated from the Maple Street property closing account to Anna Reynolds." She hadn't even waited a full day. She sold it. The house my grandfather built, the garden my mother tended, the porch where my husband and I had decided on her name. She had liquidated my entire history before the echo of the closing door had even faded. And in that moment, in that sterile beige room, the grief finally gave way to a cold, hard clarity. Anna had made a critical miscalculation. She thought she was locking away a forgetful old woman, a liability. She forgot what I did for a living before she was born. I wasn't just a mother. I was a legal archivist. And in the quiet solitude she had provided, I suddenly had all the time in the world to review the archives. I remembered every addendum, every writer, every damn clause. The Willows operated with the quiet, efficient hum of managed decline. The days were structured around pills, pureed meals, and televised game shows. For the first week, I was a model resident. I ate the bland food. I participated in the chair yoga, and I smiled politely at the nurses who spoke to me in the patronizing, high-pitched tone reserved for toddlers and the elderly. On the outside, I was the picture of gentle surrender. On the inside, I was an architect, drafting blueprints for a war. Every night, after the 10 p.m. bed check, I would pull my laptop from its hiding place beneath a thin mattress. The facility's Wi-Fi was slow, but it was enough. I started where I always started, with the archives. The city's digital property records were a labyrinth, but for me, they were a familiar landscape. I pulled up the deed for the Maple Street house, and there it was. Not on the first page, not even in the main body of the document, but in Addendum C, Section 4A, a relic of my grandfather's paranoid, brilliant legal mind, a clause I had insisted we retain when the title was transferred to me decades ago. He called it the reclamation right. It stipulated that if the property ever left direct family lineage without the written, notarized consent of the last blood descendant to inhabit it, which was me, that descendant had the right to nullify the sale and reclaim the property, with all transaction costs and damages borne by the seller. Anna, in her haste to liquidate my life, had overlooked a detail buried in the fine print, a fatal error. The next step was to find a weapon, not a lawyer, not yet. I needed an instrument of financial devastation. I began researching Mark's business dealings, his string of failed startups, the small but significant debts, the pattern of overpromising and underdelivering. It was all there in public records. But I was looking for something else, a vulnerability. I found it in his most recent venture, a boutique green investment firm built on a foundation of ethical branding and venture capital. A house of cards waiting for a gust of wind. Using a privacy-focused browser and an encrypted email, I began drafting an anonymous tip to the state's Financial Oversight Committee. I didn't make accusations. I simply asked questions. Questions about their environmental, social, and governance compliance. Questions about the sourcing of their sustainable materials. Questions about the curious overlap between their investors and Mark's golf buddies. I planted the seeds of doubt, knowing that in the world of ethical investing, perception is reality. A single regulatory inquiry could be enough to spook their backers. Gears of bureaucracy turned. I tended to the human element. My granddaughter, Lily, she had been calling, leaving worried voicemails, her voice a small beacon of warmth in the sterile silence of the willows. "Grandma, they don't want to tell me where you are. Mom just says you needed more care. Please call me." Finally, I called her back from a payphone in the facility's sad little common area. I didn't tell her everything. Not about the sale, not about the reclamation clause. I simply told her I missed her. "I miss you too," she sobbed into the phone. "Mom and Dad are fighting all the time now about money, and the house feels cold." That word, cold, was all I needed. Anna and Mark were already feeling the pressure. The trap was set. My anonymous tip to the regulators was sent. The legal groundwork for my reclamation claim was being prepared by a legal aid lawyer I had contacted, a fiery young woman who relished the chance to take on a case of elder exploitation. Anna and Mark, all they had to do was be greedy, be careless, and believe they had won. I watched their social media from a dummy account. A new car, a vacation to the Caribbean, a down payment on a larger, more aspirational home. They were spending the money from my house as fast as they could, digging their own financial grave deeper with every purchase. They thought they had buried me. They didn't realize I was the one holding the shovel. The first domino fell on a crisp October morning. I was in the communal garden at the Willows, pretending to care for a patch of pathetic-looking marigolds, when I got the alert on my burner phone. It was a link to a small, local financial news site. The headline read, "Green Future Investments Faces State Regulatory Probe Amid Compliance Concerns." The article was vague, citing an anonymous tip, but the damage was done. In the world of high-stakes ethical finance, even the hint of an investigation is a death sentence. Mark's carefully constructed world imploded with astonishing speed. The venture capitalists, terrified of being associated with a potential scandal, pulled their funding overnight. His green empire, built on little more than a slick website and a few rounds of golf, collapsed in less than a week. The new car was repossessed. The vacation was canceled. The down payment on their aspirational new home was lost. I watched it all unfold from my beige room, tracking the digital footprints of their demise. Mark's panicked LinkedIn posts, Anna's increasingly desperate social media silences. It was a clinical, dispassionate observation of cause and effect. They had built their house on a foundation of sand, and I had simply provided the tide. With their finances in ruins, it was time for the final move. My lawyer filed the reclamation claim. The legal language was complex, but the effect was simple. The sale of the Maple Street property was declared null and void. The developer who had bought it, furious at having been sold a property with a clouded title, immediately filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Anna for fraud and misrepresentation. The money she had received from the sale was frozen, then seized. Bankruptcy was no longer a possibility, it was an inevitability. They had lost everything: the house they had tried to steal, and the money they had gotten for it. They came to me at the Willows, not together. First, Mark. He was a shell of the confident man I'd once known. He sat in the visitor's lounge, his expensive suit now looking a size too big, and pleaded, not for forgiveness, but for a solution, a bailout. "I don't understand how this happened," he kept repeating. I let him talk, letting the full weight of his incomprehension settle in the air between us. "You made a bad investment, Mark," I said calmly when he finished. "It happens." We left an hour later, more confused than when he arrived. Anna came the next day. The sight of her walking into that sterile facility was almost pitiful. She was no longer the sharp, cold architect of my demise, but a broken woman. She sat where Mark had sat, and she wept. "We've lost it all, Mother," she sobbed. "The house, the money, everything." I waited until her tears subsided. Then I looked her in the eye and said, "No, Anna, you haven't lost it all. You still have a roof over your head. You just have to earn the right to stay there." The terms were laid out not with anger, but with the cold precision of a legal contract. I would drop the reclamation claim and assume their debts. I would not press charges for their conspiracy to commit fraud. In return, the house on Maple Street was mine, free and clear, and they would have a home as my employees. Mark, with his business degree, would manage the property's finances, my finances, for a nominal salary, and Anna would be the housekeeper. She would clean the floors, polish the silver, and tend the garden. She would maintain the legacy she had tried to erase room by room, day by day. Her alternative was a courtroom and the very real possibility of prison. She made her choice,